Hey everybody, it's 11 o'clock. We'll just wait a minute or two for everybody to show up. Let me know if you can see the slides, if you could. Also, the handout for today is in the chat. There's a link, so you can pull up the sheets that we're going to be talking about today. And we'll get started in I'll give it about 1 minute and then we'll go. I'm going to send out a recording of this for everybody. So um, feel free, uh, if you have questions, whatever, we'll have questions at the end. Um, but you will get a copy of this because we're going to cover a lot of ground pretty quickly. And I want to be very, very cognizant of your time. So we're going to go through this quite quickly with a Q&A at the end, and then we'll go. So, all right. Make sure I don't step on my dog who's underneath my standing table. Um, well, let's get started. Can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and see the slides? Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, I appreciate you taking precious time out of your day. This is going to be one of a monthly deal that I'm going to be doing. I'll probably be doing sort of mid-month, the workshop, different topic every month. So if this is of interest, keep an eye out for notifications for the next one, which will be on June 17th. So, but let's get started. Um, every person in this room arrived today probably with a very full calendar, and most of them did not build it themselves. Your clients built it, your inbox built it, urgency built it, the loudest deal in your pipeline built it. The premise of everything that we're going to cover today is that busyness is not an output, it's a symptom. Um, your current schedule, and I just want to, this is one of the biggest things that we're going to talk about, is the single most accurate measure of who controls your business. And for a lot of you right now, most of you are not in control. And hopefully we'll make that change today. There are two modes every broker operates in, and you move between them pretty consistently throughout the day. The question is which of these two modes dominates your week? On the left-hand side, the reactive technician is driven by their inbox. He treats responsiveness as a virtue. He is performing $25 per hour administrative work and is expecting $1,000 per hour income. The math just doesn't work. On the other side, on the right-hand side, the strategic owner has made a different decision. He has decided that his time is a finite, high yield, high value asset. He or she dictates the rhythm. Their calendar is a business instrument, not an open reservation system. The transformation from the left side over to the right side is not about working harder. It is about a structural redesign of how your week is built. This signals premium value through scarcity to your prospects and clients. And this is a critical concept. Strategic detachment is not aloofness, it's how you position yourself in the market to become probably a market authority in most cases. And this is a big theme throughout all my coaching. The idea of the reactive tax. Um, I want to put a financial number on what the reactive behavior actually cost you. Making your calendar somebody else's calendar. Because most brokers treat it as a social obligation, not as a financial decision. The reactive tax is every time an external demand hijacks your focus, so a client text, a Slack message, an email, a phone call, you are paying a hidden levy on your cognitive output. This fragmentation cost, every time you jump from a high leverage activity to a low value one, you destroy your effective hourly rate. Not just for that task, for the rest of the block. 20 minutes, and this is an important number. This is the cognitive recovery cost from sending a single 30-second email reply, phone call, whatever. And it costs a typical broker, if your goal is to be a, say, $1 million broker, your goal is to be $1 million, that 20 minutes of lost time works out to be about $166.67 per those 20 minutes. In the period of 10 hours during the week, the average broker is losing these 10 hours to operational friction and non-revenue activity. Okay. And when that happens every week, 10 hours, and you take three times hours at 10 hours at $166.67 an hour, that's about $5,000 per week. It is a big, big revenue loss. And so today we're not going to be talking about time management tips. We're going to be talking about this structural revenue leak. I'll let you get you take a look at this. And this is something I do with all my clients. It's one of the first thing I do with my clients, this diagnostic, and that's in the chat box. That link is the tool that I use with my clients, and I have them actually track their time for 2 weeks to see where that time is leaking. So, and these are the 5 categories, as you'll see in the handout, that I want them to track throughout those 2 weeks before your time of your time. So before you can fix your calendar, you need a diagnostic framework, and this is it. Every task in your week falls into one of these 5 categories: marketing, sales, delivery, administrative, and personal. Okay. 2 of them generate gross commissions, marketing and sales. Delivery doesn't generate, but it protects it. Administrative, you're losing it from the reactive tax. And obviously, you're not making any here on the personal side either. So, marketing, sales, prospecting calls, negotiating LOIs, your newsletter. This is what your income depends upon. Okay. And when I work with a lot of clients, there's a pretty finite distinction between marketing and sales, but I don't want to go into that here. But we make a big distinction between that. Delivery, you have to do it. It's really, really important, but it doesn't generate any new income. If you're doing Argus models, LOIs, due diligence, necessary, but definitely not a rainmaking type of activity. Um, Administrative, you're losing, you're losing gross commission. And typical things is, email, CRM updates, or file organizations, marketing, editing photos. Every time you spent is an hour that you're not spending up here in these two marketing and sales lanes. Okay. So the bottom line is if you're spending 40% more of your time in the lane, you've put a mathematical cap in your income. That is not an opinion, it's arithmetic. Okay, so this is one of the core mindset shifts that, I do with my clients and what this workshop is going to be talking about today. Time management, as most people practice it, is a chronology type of management, filling slots on the calendar, you know, putting in meetings and whatever, but you fill up your calendar, but this isn't a business strategy. Um, what you actually have is a biological asset. Um, and your cognitive capacity is not flat across the entire day. It peaks, plateaus, degrades, gets pumped back up again, and for most people in a predictable daily cycle. Um, I don't know if you've ever heard, but it's called your circadian rhythm. And just as a side note, if you ever want to look it up, and about 90% of the population has a similar circadian rhythm. Some people don't, but your morning hours are without a doubt your highest and most productive time frames. Up until you get up to about lunch, and that starts to wane. And then most people post lunch have a very, very low circadian rhythm, low energy, sort of tired, not focused, whatever. And then, believe it or not, as you go throughout that afternoon, it actually peaks again. So there's a time, later in the day when you get that focus back, you get that energy back or whatever. So, and if you've ever sat down and really thought about it, you can probably recognize it pretty well. Okay. So the broker who treats 7 a.m. the same as 3 p.m. is burning his highest value resource on the lowest value work, and he does it every single day. So stop managing chronology and start commanding your biological capacity and matching things that are of the utmost importance that generate gross commissions or whatever with these cycles. Okay. And this is what the next frameworks that I'm going to talk about will teach you to do. So, so this is what I do with a lot of my clients, and we try to set these up throughout the day. Is we separate, your circadian rhythm into three biological zones, um, the green, yellow, and red zone. Okay. And the green zone is your peak. It's high focus, creative problem solving, maximum cognitive output. This is the only time you should be doing $1,000 rainmaker type of activities. You know, institutional outreach, complex negotiations, sales calls, presentations, strategic thinking. Those are the types of things that you want to be doing in this green zone. Okay. The yellow zone, we try to reserve for operational execution, delivery kinds of things. In this zone, you typically have, good energy, you have good interaction and process tasks, things, but we want to try to, combine, property tours and team meetings and pipeline reviews and those types of things into this yellow zone during the day. Okay. You still have some great focus. The energy is probably high, but it's not like it was in the green zone. Okay. And the lastly is the red zone. Okay. And this is your trough. And I know for me personally, I mean, 1 to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day, and I'm probably older than a lot of you got folks, but um, I mean, I just sort of hit the wall. I mean, I get up pretty early in the morning, you know, and I go through my green zone, and then sort of later in the morning, it's my yellow zone. But I'll tell you, after lunchtime, it's for me, I have to go out. I've got a dog, and it's dog walk time to go outside in nature and whatever because I'm sort of spent. And then I get back in after that dog walk, and I'm fine. So the red zone, is your trough. Mental fatigue, high distractibility. This is the only time you should be doing non-revenue generating activity. Things like expense reports and data entry and, doing your email, whatever. So the bottom line of this slide is important. Executing complex underwriting in a red zone guarantees graded output, not maybe guarantees. And you're not going to be efficient, productive, or whatever when you try to do these things when you know you're in a red zone. So, all right, we'll get in. $1,000 per hour deep work versus $25 per hour shallow work. Okay. And I didn't talk about that, but we can get those slides. Let me, so we talked a little bit about the numbers, but just as a side note, when I talk about, $1,000 per hour work or $25 per hour work, this is how I come up with the numbers, just so you understand this. If your goal is to do $1 million per year in gross commissions, we take roughly 2,000 hours of a working year, which is a 40-hour work week time, a 50-hour week because you got vacation or whatever. And that's roughly, you take those two and multiply them together, that's roughly 2,000 hours per year. Okay. You divide $1 million by 2,000, that becomes a $500 per hour number. 2 million is 1,000. And then, working your way down, down to 500,000, then it's $250 per hour work. And that's, your green zone kind of work. That's sort of the cost of that hour in terms of revenue generation. And that's what you should be matching your work against. So, because, in the long run, you can hire out the lower work like the 25 shower work, $25 per hour shower work here. So, okay. Okay. So calling sprints, investment, lease abstracts. This is the work that directly produces or captures GCI. And this is the work you want to be doing here. Okay. CRM updates, expense reporting, tour scheduling, all this administrative type of stuff, is $25 per hour work. Okay. And you want to focus on filling your day in your green zones with this type of work. Now, one of the overall arching things that I try to do with my coaching clients is going back to sort of the five categories that I showed you earlier, is that what we try to do over a coaching engagement is, once we identify how that individual is spending his time, but eventually, and this is the only way to be able to get through those ceilings that you hit in terms of gross commissions, is okay, personal time, important, but making sure that you don't, you minimize the amount of personal time that you have during business working hours because, this is a relationship. And then the administrative stuff is stuff that we try to get off the client's plate as much as we possibly can. Then from there, we work up, as we're working and we're growing and we're getting back more hours, is trying to delegate and leverage the delivery. So the delivery time shrinks over time. And a great example of that is I had a client, a capital market group that did apartments team. And one of the things that we did was they were spending a lot of time giving tours for properties that they had that they were selling, and they would schedule individual tours. And what we did was we combined the tours into a single date and told everybody who was interested, show up. Here's the time you get the tour of the property. And they were doing it about when I started working with them, they were doing about 3 million in gross commissions a year, and we got up to five, and that was one of the biggest changes because they were doing 10, 12, 14 different tours and at a distance from their office. And so it took up a lot of time. And once they did that, I mean, the amount of time they saved was absolutely incredible. So this is the one that pushes back deeply on ingrained CRE belief. Most brokers have been told, and I've seen this numerous times, that being responsive is how you win, right? Fast, phone rings, pick it up, email pings, respond, whatever. Here's the truth. Instant responsiveness signals that your time has no value. Okay. It tells every client and prospect that you are available on demand. And that is not a market authority position. That is operating as a commodity. Okay. Responding to emails is not work. It's a $25 per hour distraction from the work. And I'm not saying that you go dark on folks and not respond to them or whatever, but I am saying, and what we're talking about here is that you batch your communications, phone call returns, email returns in that red zone, when your energy's low, that kind of thing. Okay. Set your windows. That same client that I talked about earlier, one of the managing partners of that team was spending, she said, about 4 hours a day in email. And one of the first things that we did after we, diagnosed and whatever, we took her email and handed it to her assistant. And her assistant, and this was a couple of years ago before AI started triaging inboxes, but we had her assistant triage her inbox, and her email time spent per day went from about 4 hours down to about 20 minutes per day. So it was amazing the amount of time she's saved per week and what she could then focus on because she was the rainmaking partner. And it was really important for her to be able to focus her time on, in the green zones on developing business. Okay. Delegate your inbox. Use AI. As I mentioned, you can use AI to triage your email now, and it works tremendously well. I do it. I don't get a lot of email, but it's saves time. But it's really important to create structural scarcity around your attention. The brokers that I've worked with who have done this are perceived as more organized, more professional, not less accessible. They feel like they're a little bit more eye to eye with their clients than sort of an subservient sort of commodity type broker. And it makes a world of difference in terms of winning business eventually downstream also. Okay, so this is one of the things I work on with my clients. We call it the Vault Protocol. And this is how you guard typically the first thing in the morning. The green zone time that you have is um, you, you create about a 90 to 180 minute recurring block on your calendar, in your green zone. And if you don't know what your green zone is, you should, really look back at your day and figure out when you had those, those good moments and low moments kind of thing. Um, and schedule it into your calendar every single week, at least, 3, 4, 5 times a day. Um, you have to go total digital blackout during this block. Airplane mode on, email closed, no Slack stuff open. I know I had clients that used to, they would have a flag in their cubicle and they would like mount the flag up that they weren't to be disturbed by anybody in their cubicle. And that also worked really, really well. Okay. So um, there's only one time that, depending upon the client, this is differs from client to client, and we call it the value firewall. And there's only one time when you can actually, pierce that vault, and that is uh, you cannot be breached unless a sales opportunity, and I'm using anything less than $50,000 in commission value, depending upon where you are. It may be 25 or 35 or $45,000 in commission value. But if somebody calls or emails, that's the only reason, and it's sales. It's not, a prospect that's unqualified. It's, a prospect that maybe has a deal. This is, a sales opportunity. This is where you've qualified them, met with them or whatever, and they have a question, and you're, imminently going to close them. That's the only time you allow that to be pierced. So, and the 50,000 is not an arbitrary number. A lot of my clients that I work with are trying to get to that $1 million or higher number. So, $50,000 commission is, sort of the averages that they need to hit to be able to get those numbers. So, okay, the second framework is how you structure your entire week, and we have what we call stages. And the front stage is, the high value work, negotiations, wall prospecting, closing presentations, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Then backstage, $100 underwriting, drafting OM, CRM updates, etc. And then off stage is recovery, rituals, shutdown. We have, protocols that we work on, especially shutdown rituals is really important that we'll talk about in a little bit. But um, these we use these to schedule your week, and I'll show you how that goes here in a second. But what we want to make sure is that we don't want to mix front stage, backstage, off stage in blocks that we've created during our week, because then we'll be paying the reactive tax, and you lose 20 minutes and whatnot. So we want to try to theme out our week, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, but try to make your days as efficient as possible. So, okay. Oop, oop. Okay, so talking about this, mixing front stage and backstage activities, to different cognitive states, and you're going to get this 20 minutes of lost cognitive recovery time. And, if you're working on, negotiating an LOI or, putting together an LOI or response to a negotiation, and if take a phone call, whatever, you know what it's like to try to restart that time. And it just creates a lot of friction, especially if it's something like, you know, a 15-second question that you could have gotten to much later in the day during one of your red zones. So we want to do that. So here we talk about, putting together your ideal week template, theming your days by what's the predominant thing that you want to be doing. And, an example of this is, you know, doing backstage on Monday, getting caught up, getting things out the door, whatever. Front stage, prospecting, site tours, whatever. I have clients that, are religiously only scheduling site tours and what on Tuesdays and Wednesdays of every week. They guard the rest of the week and will not do, site tours and that type of thing, other than on those days. And they force clients and prospects into those days, because it's most efficient for them. So, okay. And then, Friday, again, backstage, doing, cleaning things up, getting yourself cleaned up or whatever, and getting, yourself caught up for the end of the week and being able to go into the weekend without 100 things hanging over your head. Oop. Okay. Here's what happens if you build the framework, but you don't defend it. Okay. You get the market hijack, you know, you get the erosion in your cognitive capacity, and lacking boundaries forces you back into that reactive calendar management, degrading your peak output. And you want to get into, utilizing a Friday shutdown, a ritual, whatever. And so you can just mentally detach from work. And I know it's very difficult in this day and age. So you can, go into the next week, refreshed, energized, and whatever. So, um, let's go. So here, I don't want to I'm sort of running behind here, so I'm going to sort of go a little quicker. Okay. In your attachment in the chat that I put in there, this is what I do with all my clients. When I first start working with them, that's one of the first things that they do. And if you see, it's just a simple Excel spreadsheet, and you track every task that you're doing throughout the day in those five categories, marketing, sales, delivery, administrative, and personal throughout your day. Okay. And you do it over a two week period of time. And, I'd like to make sure that my clients do it as efficiently as possible, not do it at the end of the day and try to remember how you spent 15 minutes, because you'll never do it. Whenever they change from one type of category, one of those five categories, from one to the next, that they mark that down. Okay. And if you try to do it based off of memory, you won't remember and it won't be accurate, but it's really important to get this. So when we do this, what it reveals is the actual return on your time invested, and it will, where your green zone hours are really going, how much of your front stage time is being contaminated by backstage work. And typically what we'll expose is about 10 to 15 hours of leak time, going to things, from what we call context switching from, 15-minute of administrative to 15-minute of marketing to then 15 minutes of sales or whatever, you're losing all that time in between. So we want to try to get that down. Now, the interesting thing is, I took a look at the last six clients that I brought in, and most of them were sort of into the 600 to 800,000 gross commission range. And I had them go through this. And when they came in, when we first started working together, they typically said, "Oh yeah, I work, I'm not super, I'm not, going crazy hours wise, but I work, 40, 50, 55 hours a week or whatever." The interesting thing is all six of these clients, when they went through and did this time audit, the actual not non-personal time of the four categories, marketing, sales, delivery, and administrative work, which was sort of ironic, was 26 hours a week. They thought they were working 40, 50 hours a week. In actuality, they were doing all their work in about 26 hours per week. So just going through and doing this and understanding that is one of the first breakthroughs that you have, because you just don't understand how you leak time doing these things. So really important. Okay. So why is this important? Okay. Clients buy the system, not the schedule. Okay. Your calendar built around your client's demands is a job. Okay. And then you become an employee of your clients. Um, a calendar of design intent is a business. Now you're the architect of your business and of your time. And when you operate from a structured calendar, clients don't feel neglected, they feel handled. Um, they feel the difference between a broker who is reactively available and a broker who runs a professional operation. Okay. Um, you perceive your structure, the ones that perceive your structure as being somewhat unresponsive because you're not there at their beck and call, you know, in actuality aren't your best clients. I mean, you should really think about, whether you should be working with them or not. Your clients hired you for your judgment, your market knowledge, your negotiating capacity. They want your expertise. They don't want you to be, the lackey and constantly available to answer them um, at their whim. So, okay. So, okay, this is sort of the before and after that we try to accomplish with my clients. Okay. And I'm sure you're all sitting there going, how many of you do this first thing you come into your office in the morning? Okay. This is what we're striving for in the first 90 minutes. Okay. So we'd like to get, you get property tours scheduled, like I talked about before, whenever their client requests them, you're batching property tours to Tuesdays and Wednesdays during, during yellow or red, zones kind of thing. Administrative tasks are interweaved randomly with client calls. You know, you, if you can, Friday afternoons, siloed for administrative cleanup and reopening as best you possibly can. So here, the first three moves, and we're getting close to the end here. Um, Install your vault. Lock your green zone blocks in your calendar before the end of this week. Defend it with the 50 or whatever your number is value firewall, and don't give that up. You'll be amazed how much you get done. Okay. Go through and do a 14-day time log. Track your time real time, 15-minute intervals. Don't try to do it at the end of the day because it doesn't work. Um, and then take your week and designate, your front stage, your backstage, and offstage days, whatever. And you'll find that if you can start batching this stuff and theming your days to, efficiency, being more efficient on certain things and doing backstage stuff on other days, you'll find that it'll be amazing how much more you'll get done. Okay. So, the question is, what is the exact 24-hour task you are deleting from your calendar today to protect your $1 million future? Okay. Name the task. And for a lot of you, I know for a fact that if you just went into your office and didn't do email the first thing, that your life would be immeasurably different. One of the things that's not in the slides that is sort of deeper into this sort of, you know, concept of trying to get back this 10 to 15 hours of time is a guy by the name of Michael Hyatt has developed a system. And one of the things that we try to impress upon my clients and install is Sunday evening, planning your week, doing this backstage, front stage stuff, or whatever, setting up on Sunday night your green zones, your yellow zones, your red zones, obviously specifically meetings and all that stuff, putting it in there. And one of the most important things that my clients have found that is that at the end of every day, we have what is known as a shutdown ritual. And before you leave is to take, it probably doesn't take any more than 15 minutes or so to triage your day, take a look at your calendar, what went well, what didn't. You understand, you know, based on what we talked about, and if you've gone through the time tracking sheet, have you been context switching a lot during the day? Did you get interrupted during one of your early morning green zones kind of thing? Did your client take you out of one of those green zones type of thing? So critique it, and then before you leave, the last thing to do is again take a look at taking what you learned from the day, looking at the next day's calendar, and seeing how you can adjust, tweak, or whatever that to try to get it as efficient and as effective based on your circadian rhythm and your green zones and whatnot during that day. So, okay. So, um, thank you very much. That sort of does the presentation, and I ran over a little bit. I tried to do these in 40 minutes. So if you would like, I'd be happy to sit down with you and go through it. And here I will put a, a link into the chat. If you want to schedule 30 minutes with me, be happy to go through this. Be, helpful, and I can run you through, how to do this and, how to set up your week or whatever. I'd be happy to do that, free of charge, no big deal or whatever. And, I've just about all my clients save a ton of time and their productivity goes through the roof just by going through and doing the diagnostic and then going through this process of, trying to set up their green, yellow, and red zones, theming their days, and then going through and significantly triaging how their day went from a schedule standpoint, and then looking at the next day and trying to improve upon what they did. Um, so that's it. That's the presentation. What I will do is open it up for questions. I can, hang around until the hour. Um, if the best way to do this, so everybody doesn't talk about the same time, if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and throw in a question mark, and I'll call on you, and then unmute yourself. Any questions? Pete, what link? The link are you looking for? The link is up above the playbook. I call it the productivity playbook up above here. That's for the diagnostic, and then to schedule time with. Oh, here's the calendar link. I forgot to hit send. Sorry. Is that what you're looking for? The calendar link. So, any questions? If you just punch in, and I'll call on you. Punch in a question mark in the chat, and I will be happy to call on you. I'll hang around. So, or if you want, just go ahead and unmute yourself. I mean, a lot of people have dropped off. Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, if that's easier for you.
Yeah, I have a question, Jeff, to Mark.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, where is that? I was looking for the workshop playbook. What is it up top of the
Yeah, here, let me copy it in let me just copy it in here again. Let me get up to the top of my notes. I got a link in here. And it's a link that says, productivity playbook.
Okay.
Copy, and then all right. Did you see that in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why, it gives you all this LinkedIn box and everything. I don't know why it's doing that, but um, it's there. So,
Got it. Thanks.
all right.
So, Jeff, are you saying like so for some of your clients, like on the green zone stuff, are they only like prospecting like once a week, or was that just kind of like an
No,
example?
I mean, we try to commit, you know, at least 3 to 4 days per week. But there are different types of green zone activities, and we separate marketing and sales into sort of two different buckets. But um, we find, I mean, for example, I mean, if you've got a cold call and you've got a campaign going and you've got a bunch of calls scheduled with folks or whatever, I think you probably have seen that, first thing in the morning is probably the best time to do that type of stuff, right?
It is, yeah.
So, we try to schedule as much time as we possibly can for that, obviously. Because, as I talked about earlier, is that, that green zone stuff is ideally best suited for marketing and sales.
Okay, so like for instance, I saw you said like cold call sprints. Like, would you do like in a green zone, like ju could you like do like a cold call sprint and then take a break and work on like an analysis for a client and then go back to cold calls and like kind of like cycle through within that one zone, or is that kind of like
Yeah, I mean, I
that
would,
could have
but
changed?
I would, if it's 25 minutes at a time, though, okay.
Okay.
It's don't do, if take for example, if you did like a 90-minute kind of green zone. If you could do 25-minute, maybe take a break, 25-minute, take a break, 25-minute, take a break is the ideal kind of situation.
Yeah, okay, but working on the same thing. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
But high priority, high revenue generating type of thing.
Okay.
That answer your question?
It did. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? I'll hang here for a couple more minutes. If anybody else has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So, Pete, you're welcome. Happy to do it. I will be doing these every month. Different topic, obviously, or yes, not obviously, but I will be doing a different topic. Next one is an interesting topic. It'll be how to create consistency in your revenue. So I would think that would probably be a pretty interesting one for a lot of people in business. So, all right. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, thank you so much, for the few that are still around. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And if you want to go through and we'll get you set up on this, I'd be happy to, spend a half an hour with you doing that. So thank you again for your time.